Welcome to Carnivore Lifestyle for Women. I am so excited today to bring on a new friend. We just met at Hack Your Health in Florida, and I'll let him tell you more about that. But this is Chef James Berry, also the genius behind PLUCK Seasoning. James, will you tell my audience how we met and the interesting way that we met?
Well, what's fascinating is we met on the first day of the conference and immediately had a really, really deep conversation and just, I thought, connected really nicely. Not a surface level conversation, but a deep conversation. I like that kind of stuff. But the funniest kind of most kismet kind of thing that happened was that I had reached out to someone previous to the event about being on their podcast. And when I got back, I saw a message from that person saying, well, I can't interview you just yet. Like, I'll do it later, but I'm not recording right now. But there's someone who I'd like to refer you to who has a podcast, and it was you.
That's
I
amazing.
mean, that's like just truly, yeah, when stuff like that happens, you're just like, okay, the universe works A in mysterious ways, but B, like clearly we were meant to meet.
It was very good to meet you, and you were one of the very first people to speak to me there. It was my very first time going to this event, and you made it all so calm. And you were like, I'll introduce you to some people. Just come over here to my booth. And I did. And you made sure I met everybody that I needed to. And it was like we were old friends.
Yeah,
So I just really
agreed.
loved that. I appreciate that.
Ag- Thank you. And I'm glad to get to talk to your burgeoning audience on this topic because it's one that's near and dear to my heart.
It's so deep. And I did a little bit more research and was like, wow, I cannot wait to have you on now. This is so exciting. So, yeah, I love that our mutual friend introduced us after we actually met each other. So, God aligns thing. It's really cool. For the women that are listening, I want you to tell them about how you got into being a chef, then what led you into Pluck Seasoning.
Yeah, I mean, the journey to being a chef was an interesting one. I loved cooking when I was a kid, like just loved it. I did not see a career path though. I mean, back in the day, we take for granted that the chef culture now is a celebrity culture. There's all those
Mhm.
food shows and cooking shows, but back in the day, it was like 2 shows, I think. I mean, it really wasn't that many. It was like PBS shows. It was like Julia Childs and maybe some random other person. I remember this guy named the Frugal Gourmet. I don't
Huh.
really remember anyone else but Julia Child. But it was definitely not a path of like becoming a chef was like a clear path towards owning a restaurant. Like that was
Uh-huh.
kind of it. And I was like, I am not doing that. My dad used to own a grocery store and he would work these crazy hours sometimes, and I just from a very young age was like, "I don't want that life. I want normal hours."
Mhm.
So, didn't see cooking as a viable career, but for some reason, it just kept coming back, and
Mhm.
9/11 happened of all things. So, I really see 9/11 as, like, my generation's, Pearl Harbor, really. It's like the first
Wow.
other than Pearl Harbor, it's like only like the second time a disaster like that has happened on on US soil. And that made me really look at my life differently. I was just like, I want everything I choose in my life to have purpose, to have heart, and I don't want to just sit here and wait for life to happen to me. I'm going to really be more mindful about what my mission on this planet is. And so I was in my 30s when that happened, and I was like, so what do I do? Because it's like overwhelming changing careers and changing intentions at any age, but particularly when you're in your 30s, when most of my friends had families and homes. I was like poor and like rejigging my whole life. And
Mm.
so I audited my life and I was like, what have I always loved? What was the essence? I believe when we're children, the essence of what we are passionate about that age is I should say that again. When we're children, what we're interested in is our essence, I believe. We're tapping into what we purely are. And for me, that was cooking. And so I started going down this path and it was beautiful. I gotta say, it's like I have a feeling you probably believe in manifestation, right? Like when you're in alignment with faith or the higher purpose or whatever. And that was what it felt like. I went from working really hard at something and barely getting any of it back to when I got aligned with cooking. I worked really hard and I got more back. Like I got 200% back. It was amazing. I would literally think of something like, I want to cook for a band. And then within a week or two, I would get a call. Hey, do you want to cook for the Vans Warp Tour? It's 50 bands. We're going to travel the US. Actually, it's more than 50 bands. It was like 200 bands, but it was like, we're going to travel the US and we're going to visit 50 states in 60 days. And I was just like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So I just had this miraculous life moving forward, this amazing opportunities. I cooked for a lot of celebrities, some like Tom Cruise and George Clooney and Gerard Butler and even Barbara Streisand briefly. So had amazing experiences. But ultimately, why I do it, what I'm in it for, is to help people. I want to
Mhm.
help people with their health. I believe that food is key. It's a thing we do daily that is key to our health. And I believe most of us are pretty much at this point in our lives very confused because the narrative keeps changing. I think many of us are stuck in chronic illness, which confuses things even more. And I just want to help cut through all the fat and like
Ex
just help people be healthy and do it as naturally as possible and do it with what mother nature has provided and help people in that way. And that's what brought me to Pluck, which was from my research and from my 20 plus years of being a chef. I've learned that animal organ meats are the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. And my goal or my desired outcome was to make them accessible to everybody, like to make them taste better, to make them not need to know how to cook to do them, to not worry about sourcing, but to take care of all of that for you.
So I love that you shared all of that, that you have gone from in your 30s working on changing direction, really looking inside of yourself and finding that cooking was the thing that gave you joy. And it really was the thing that, wow, it just unfolded in front of you like so naturally. You were able to cook for these people that most people don't have access to because you were so passionate and this is something that you want to share with the world. I also want to know what exactly brought you to making Pluck and doing all that research. I read a little bit about where that comes from, and I'd love to hear that from my audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing as a chef, I knew that I could bring flavor to things. I knew that I could help people, I could help the organ meats taste good. But the why was being a father. When I became a father, it was so much bigger than just me. It was about my kids. It was about me living long enough to be in their lives. So mortality is obviously an issue as well. And so I just wanted to do everything I could to get these nutrient dense foods into their diets, but I didn't want there to be a fight. You know, I think so often when we try to get healthy food into our families, meals, it does become a fight. And I've talked to so many people. They're like, oh, yeah, I make pates. I do this, I do that. But my kids don't eat it. I end up being the only person that eats it. And I'm like, well, we got to
Mhm.
solve that. Like, we shouldn't be slaving away in the kitchen and then people are not eating the food we make, particularly when our intentions are so pure, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why it was about organ meats, but why specifically I created Pluck, because Pluck is what I did was I took freeze dried and powdered organ meats, the ones that you find in capsules, and it's the most preserved way of getting organ meats into your diet.
Mhm.
But I don't like the idea of swallowing capsules. I want us to
Yeah.
eat our food. And so I came up with a way of taking that freeze dried powdered organ meats and combining spices and herbs and salt to it to make it taste good. So it's like it's a seasoning. It's as easy as just salting your food. But why I made it a seasoning is because my kids got sick and we were on a trip to Canada and they both got Shiga toxin, which is a form of E. coli
Mm.
and it's deadly for elderly people and for very young people. It can be deadly. You can't give them antibiotics. You really have to almost let it just play out and leave their body. And for my oldest at the time, who was about 5, it went through in about 3 days. And so you can't hold anything in, like food, water, it all just comes out. So you're basically,
Yeah.
you're fasting basically when you're on it. You feel
Yeah.
sick and you basically can't eat or drink anything. So first kid, 3 days, she was out of it and she was fine. My youngest though, who was only about 1 and who was already very lean,
Mhm.
it just didn't go away. And it was at day 8, and I thought she was turning. Like, I thought I had to leave town for work, and I thought I was leaving with her feeling better.
Mhm.
And I came back I was only gone a day, but I came back the next day and she was still very much in it. And it was really scary. I mean, she was looking like skin and bones at that point. I could see the bones just jutting out. And so I was just watching her waste away and I was like, what do I do here? I can't everything I give her, she can't hold in. And then miraculously, she started being able to eat like toast. And we're gluten free, so it was gluten free toast, which means nothing because this doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy or anything. But
Right.
so now she's eating gluten free toast with some butter on it, and I'm like watching her eat that, going like, oh my gosh, like can I give her anything healthy on that? Like something that's going to be more nutritious. And the problem is whenever someone is sick, and then they find that food that they're not sick on, they get addicted to that food. Like, that's now their
Mhm.
safe food, and they don't budge from it. So, ultimately, what she did is she got really addicted to toast, and so I was like, "Okay, what do I do?" And that's where I was like, if I had something I could sprinkle on that toast that was nutrient dense, that would solve it, and so that's where that idea of sprinkling it onto something, and that's ultimately what I did create. And what's kinda cool about Pluck is that most dietary changes are having people shift from their comfort zone to something new. So if I come to you and I say, you need to stop eating everything and only eat meat. Well, that might be okay for some people, but for others, it'd be like, wait, you want me to cut out wine? You want me to cut out, whatever, mashed potato, whatever their comfort foods are? That's
Mhm.
really going to be hard because for most people, food is safe and those comfort foods are safe. And particularly with a kid, it's the one place that they have control, right? Is what goes in their mouth. And what's so cool about Pluck that I didn't even know when I was creating it, I learned this after the fact, which is like it doesn't ask anyone to change their diet. It's just like, look, you're eating mac and cheese, okay, sprinkle it over the mac and cheese. You're eating pizza, no worries, sprinkle it over the pizza. And that's such a nice first step. It's like,
Mhm.
we're just meeting you where you are, but we're upping the nutrients you're getting because most of us are nutrient deficient. And so a
Mhm.
lot of times the health ailments, the behavior issues, like that's all because we're just nutrient deficient. And if you just get the nutrients up, a lot of that stuff starts to go away and then they can handle new things.
So I wanted to ask you about, do you believe that food is medicine and that food is fuel? And that when we take the proper fuel and start incorporating it into our life, we can see improvements in our health?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, my experience with that was when I was just out of college, I got a kidney stone.
Mm.
And I was about 3,000 miles from my home. I was doing this summer program and I didn't know many people and it was scary, I was in the hospital. I didn't know I had a kidney stone at the time, but I had prior to being in this event, I had to leave college early and I had to finish all my finals and I basically had to do everything 2 weeks before everyone else.
Mhm.
And I was drinking root beer and I was eating pizza. Like, that's it for, like, 2 weeks, basically. And then I got this kidney stone, and it's so painful. I mean, it's the closest a man could get to having a child, but, I bow down on all women for being able to give birth because it's so painful, just a kidney stone, I can't even imagine how painful birth is. And I was very fortunate, though, so I passed it, and the minute the doctor came in, I said, "So, how do I ensure I never get this again? Like, how did I even get this to begin with?" And fortunately, the
Yeah.
doctor said, "Well, what have you been eating and drinking?" And had he not connected what I had just gone through to what I ate or drank, I don't think I would be here where I am right now as a chef because I went down this path because that was the first time in my early 20s was connecting, oh, food affects our health.
Mhm.
And I know it's so rudimentary in theory, but I think most people still don't connect that food equals medicine or that food affects our health. And so that has been my mission from day one when I went down the path of becoming a chef was to change, like basically understand our behaviors, our psychology around food, but then change how that food is prepared or how it's presented to you so that it will improve your health. And what I mean by that is like for example, if you're someone that's addicted to eating lots of starches, like potatoes or something like that, what I would do back in the day when I first started chefing is I would come in and I would be like, okay, let's get, instead of those kind of starches, let's do resistant starches because those are going to be a
Mhm.
lot better for you. So then I would do like parsnips, or I would do like cellulac, or I would do stuff that was lower glycemic, affected the body differently, and supported that person and feeling like, oh, I'm still getting that comfort food of mashed potatoes or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
So I was preparing those healthier foods in a very specific texture. And then skip ahead, like I said, 20 years later, and now I'm doing it with organ meats. So for me now, it's like, 96% of Americans are nutrient deficient, and yet we're not calorie deficient. So
Yep.
clearly that is an issue of the foods we're eating. And I do believe that most people, I mean, particularly like, I know we're talking to like women in midlife, and so many of them can think they're doing everything right, eating clean, exercising, but their metabolism is slowing. Their energy is crashing. Their hormones feel chaotic. And what really is happening is that their nutrient demands have
Mhm.
increased while their nutrient intake has decreased. So it's even more crucial when you're in the ages we are now in this midlife era to really focus on what foods are we eating? Are these truly nutrient dense foods? And for my money, organ meats are hands down the most nutrient dense food. And yet it's also the food that most Americans are not eating. So
That's right.
I am out to fix that.
Well, in meeting you and telling you my story about histamine and all the things that I've gone through, that's really another heart that I have for my listeners is to help them, especially if they're going through like unexplained histamine intolerance and they don't know what it is. So they're just having reactions to every single thing they eat. And how I met you, and you were like, "Well, I have the pure form. It's no seasonings in it. It's just pure." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know," because I've never had organ meats. I've never had a desire to eat organ meats. And you completely changed my mind about it because when I came home, I was sprinkling it. I was like, whoa, that's a lot coming out. Let me slow that down a little bit. I feel so much better. And I'm noticing that it does not bother me when I put it on my burger patties. So it's
Well,
amazing.
and also it's because they don't age organ meats. They age muscle meat. They don't age
Hmm.
organ meats, so the histamines in organ meats are way, way lower.
Hmm.
So that, I mean, right there, it is a low histamine food.
Which is amazing. I know that a lot of Americans say, I don't
Yeah.
want that. I don't want to taste that. I'm not into buying lots of supplements and swallowing, pills. So, if a woman was dealing with a lot of health issues, how could this help her? And where would she start if she was dealing with histamine intolerance?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, because really the hardest part of, I'll share some of the benefits, but ultimately, it's not, the hardest part isn't convincing women organ meats are healthy. It's really getting them into the diet, right? So it's
Mhm,
twofold. It's like, yeah, I want you to understand their benefits, but I also want to kind of empower you to be like, okay, here are some different ways that you can get them in because pluck is only one. But basically, I would say that first of all, they're the most concentrated source of nutrients we can eat,
mhm,
and and they boost energy, they boost metabolism, so they're rich in B12, iron, CoQ10. You would think like, well, it doesn't muscle meat have B12, but it's interesting. I've even talked to some people who eat meat and yet are still low in B12. So it
mhm,
sometimes it doesn't matter what, if you're eating something that has that vitamin. What matters more is, are you absorbing that vitamin? So what is the absorbability of that vitamin? And
mhm,
organ meats are highly bioavailable, like highly. And I would even offer sometimes even more so than muscle meat, because a lot of times what happens is when people are cooking meat, they are usually overcooking it a lot of times. And as you already mentioned, histamines are higher when you overcook meat, but also you're really destroying, denaturing a lot of those nutrients.
mhm,
If you are Now most people also overcook organ meats, but if you properly prepare organ meats, you don't actually overcook them and you just cook them properly, they will be more absorbable than even muscle. And you can even use the example of if I put a steak on the counter and I put a
Mhm.
liver on the counter and I let them both get room temperature, the steak keeps its form. Liver starts to kind of dissolve on the counter. It literally starts to
Really?
melt on the counter. So right there, just structurally, one is more stable and the other is not. Right there, that tells you, well, if it's breaking down like that just with oxygen, it's going to break down
Mhm.
even faster in your body. So that's one thing. But they also stabilize hormones because they have vitamin A, they have
Oh,
healthy fats, they have zinc and copper, which all support hormone balance, skin health, and also stabilize moods, which is key as we get older. They
mhm.
reduce stress and cravings due to the B vitamins, the choline. They also I've noticed some people who have reported back to me that all they did differently with their diets is started eating pluck or organ meats, and they lost weight. So it really does help to
What?
stabilize because when you have enough nutrients in your body, you don't crave as much. Like a lot of times cravings are because you're nutrient deficient, not because you're emotional, even though we think that
Yeah.
that's the reason. But so it also supports, as I just mentioned, detox of weight loss. It has unique peptides that help to enhance liver functions, which is essential for fat burning and hormone clearance. And then it also has protein. So it does help with muscle and strength. And that's something that midlife women and men all have to be aware of because you're losing your muscle so fast as we get older. So we do need not only to increase our protein, but we want to make sure that we're getting essential amino acids and nutrients that support lean mass and longevity. So that's kind of why organ meats, but let's just pivot now to like, well, how do I get them in my diet? So
Mhm.
the first way, absolutely easiest is pluck. It's as easy as you just salt your food. And what's happening is you're getting the microdosing of those organ meats, and we have 5 of them in pluck. We have liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and
Mhm.
pancreas. And literally just salt your food. And microdosing plus frequent use. So the key is that you got to use it often, and then you get cumulative effect. And you'd be surprised, a little goes a long way. You don't need much. Like in the pure, the one I think you have,
Mhm.
um, that one is 1 teaspoon of 100% organ meat blend is so 1 teaspoon is equal to 2 ounces of organs. It's extremely concentrated. You only need a little bit. Like I always even
Okay.
tell people to start with like a half a teaspoon for that product. The
Mhm.
seasonings are not 100% product, but they have a good amount of organs in there. So you could just use those and follow your cravings. But that's just the beginning. That's like that is what we call the gateway.
Sure.
You can also do things like go out and buy ancestral blends that have already some organ meats in them. So they're ground
Mhm.
meats with organ meats in them. Those are accessible. Or you can make your own. You can go buy like a beef liver,
Okay.
keep it frozen, and then pull it out of the freezer when you're having any ground meat and just grate it. Use a cheese grater and grate it right into the ground meat.
Okay.
The key is with a pound of meat, you just want to keep the liver to about start with maybe 1 tablespoon, maybe go up to 2 tablespoons per pound.
Okay.
And here's what's cool about it though. It doesn't have to be ground beef that you do the liver with. Like even though you're using a
Oh,
beef liver, you could add it to turkey, to chicken, to lamb. It doesn't matter because the ratio of the liver is low enough where you won't taste it. So it's like go crazy. Anytime you do any ground meat, just great. The beef liver in there. Another great option is think about species. So chicken hearts, for example, very mild, very easy to cook. You chop it up, make it not look like a heart. You can add it to anything. If you do any kind of sauces and stuff like that, that's fine. But you can also chop that up and add it to your ground meats if you're strictly carnivore or anything like that. It's like there's so much you can do with it and it's so mild and then you won't taste it. You just the key is ratios. It's more of the product or the food that you know and less of the new food. That's all you got to worry about. Tongue is another one. So heart, tongue, those are gonna be closer to muscle meats, and tongue is a great one because you can just slow cook it or pressure cook it. There's a skin on the outside that's overwhelming, like, that's the part that everyone's like, "Ugh, that's gross," but that skin, once you cook it long enough, it's about an hour, but once you cook it long enough, that thing comes right off, and underneath it is this delicate, stringy muscle, and it's got more flavor than most muscle meat, It's got more nutrients. And if you think of it from a cost perspective, it could be coming from the same 100% grass-fed cow, and it's gonna be cheaper than that ribeye. The ribeye is gonna be 24.99 a pound, and the tongue is gonna be more like $6 or $7 a pound.
Hmm.
So it's incredible savings, and yet it's very large. It's not tongues are not small, they're very large.
I don't know if I can get over the idea of it. I'm like, I can eat cow, I can eat beef patties, I can eat ribeye. But like once you start getting into all these organs, I'm like, I'm not sure about that. It's because you're a chef, maybe that you're able to
I'll tell
like
you
navigate
I'll
this.
tell you, Christina, at Hack Your Health, you probably didn't make it, but I did a cookie demo and I showed people how to make, I showed them chicken hearts, I showed them liver, beef liver, and then I showed beef tongue. Every single person left trying them all and saying they were so good. And all I did
Oh.
differently was I showed people how to properly cook it. The tongue is, once you peel off that outer layer,
Mhm.
it looks just like a muscle. It like you won't even it looks literally just like a piece of like a I don't know what an example of a cut would be, but it doesn't look any different than a beef muscle. The chicken hearts, I just cooked them in some butter. People were freaking out. They were so good. And then the liver, I just properly cooked. What happens is when you overcook it, is when it gets the texture gets chalky and the flavor gets even more pronounced. So
Mm.
the key is, if you don't currently like these things because you tried them and they weren't that you didn't like how they tasted, it's probably because it was either the person that cooked them who traumatized you, how they cooked them that traumatized you,
Yeah.
and just that they didn't cook it properly.
I'll see. I'll talk to my husband about it and see if he'll help me out. Yes, I missed your demo and I was really upset about that once I figured out that I had missed it. There was a lot going on down there. I have a question for you. I've heard people say that you shouldn't eat liver all the time, that you should eat it occasionally. So, how does this work when you're doing this blend of like the pure and you're eating it every day on all of your food?
Yeah, it's a great question because they are, I mean, that's a testimony of how nutrient dense they are, right? That you
Hmm.
can get too much. But here's what's beautiful. We are in Homo sapien body. This body biologically, it's an ancient body. The foods that we're currently eating, 70, 80 years old since
Mm-hmm.
early 1900s, right? Some of these foods, and even more recent foods, really only like 50 years. So we're talking about a biology that's been developed for hundreds of thousands of years versus food that's been developed in a laboratory for only the last 70 years, maybe. So very, very different. Well, the communication pathway that ultimately got us to this body was determining two things. Whenever we ate any food, and obviously back in the day, we couldn't go to a store. We had to forage, we had to hunt,
Hmm.
we had to do all those things, right? So the communication that had to happen was, is this food going to kill me or is it going to nourish me? It's that simple, but also that serious, right? Because if you ate the wrong food, you died. So there is a biology that comes with that, and it's called the neuro-lingual response. And it's basically it's our senses tied to our taste buds, tied to the process of actually eating. And when you utilize all three of those, so sight, touch, hearing, all those senses we have tied to now I'm chewing the food in my mouth, mixing it with saliva, which is preparing for digestion. And the flavor of that is informing our body, does this have nutrition? Does it not? And does it have flavor that is potentially going to kill or nourish us? So, like, you think about a bitter flavor. A bitter flavor was very informative of, like, oh, this might be poisonous, right? But it's also like salty flavors were also indication of like electrolytes and like water retention, right? We're like replenishing your bodies in that way. So the flavors ancestrally equaled nutrition. Now skip ahead to this world we live in now where you could be eating something that has strawberry flavoring where the body goes like, "Oh, this is a strawberry." But it's not, the nutrition of the strawberry never comes. So
Hmm.
what we have is that the body's being fooled with these added flavors. So what we need to do to kind of make sure that we're never getting too much of something or that we're not eating foods that are conducive to our body, we have to do a couple things. We have to, first of all, eat the food. We have to
Hmm.
chew it We have to do it slow enough, not rushing around, in our cars eating while we go from
Standing up by the counter.
standing up by the counter. Exactly. Like we need to be eating slow enough, putting our fork down in between each bite, that kind of thing, that our bodies can chew and get the communication of what we're eating so that it can say not only when to stop, but also how much or how little do I need of this. And what's fascinating is when you eat your food, and we can use salt as an example on our tongues. If I put salt on your tongue, the first time I do it, your body might say, this is good. The third or fourth time, your body's literally rejecting it, going like, too much, too much. I'm getting too much.
Mhm.
I'm getting overwhelmed, right? But if you swallow a salt tablet, you get zero communication. And then
Mm.
maybe 30 minutes later, you're like, why am I so bloated? I got too much of something. So when we
Yeah.
use this neuro-lingual response, this process of communication that's been developed for over hundreds of thousands of years, the body knows when to stop. The body knows whether it wants or doesn't want something. There's an innate knowledge to being this human species that our bodies are already hardwired wired to tell us. But the problem is that we're, in chronic stress. Most
Mhm.
of us are swallowing our supplements instead of actually eating them in food. The food is
Yep.
ultra processed and like confusing. There's so many factors that are going on in this modern society that is throwing off this innate knowledge. So I absolutely believe if you are eating liver, your body will never let you eat more than it wants. And you
Mhm.
know this because it's like, I mean, there's even muscle testing, for example, like it's a form of muscle testing. If I go to lift something that's too heavy for my body, what happens to my grip? It
Okay.
releases, right? It gives out. The body is designed to protect itself. It will not let you do something if it is given the chance to communicate that to you that it doesn't want, right? It's not going to let you do something it doesn't want or need as long as it's allowed to communicate it to you. Problem is we're just most of us aren't listening. And there's a great quote from my friend, Dr. Bill Schindler. He says, "Look, we are the only species in the world that looks to someone else to tell us what to eat."
Mhm.
There's over 9 million species. We are not that special. It's because we brains are just so big that we basically tricked ourselves into forgetting how to eat. And so that we
Mhm.
have to get back to it. You gotta eat your food. You gotta, first of all, eat foods that have flavors that are found in nature, not natural
Mhm.
flavors, but foods that have flavor that's found in
Right.
nature. You gotta eat foods that are nutrient dense, and then you gotta eat them mindfully. You gotta eat them slow enough, mindfully, so that you can actually get the communication points that your body innately will provide.
I find that my clients and the women that I talk to, they are trying to control their body and they're trying to eat the least amount of calories possible. They want to moderate sugar. They want to count it into their calories, but they want to moderate that and processed foods. And I really work hard to explain to them that when you're eating things that the body doesn't recognize as food, it causes a lot of chaos and confusion in the body and it can't do its job. I also find that people are not dealing with stress, they're not sleeping, and they want to lose weight in any means possible. So, when a midlife woman is trying to lose weight and do it in a low carb approach, how do you think that organ meats and pluck, specifically could support her and her results in a way that is not taking away? Because, like dieting is really just taking away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really have to you have to think of it like organ meats are like our nutritional reset button. They
Mm.
give the body the raw materials it needs to feel energized, metabolically strong, hormonally balanced, and resilient again. So you want to, I always think of it like, when you go to that convenience store, they have like those emergency kind of like capsules or drinks right there at the counter because
Mhm.
there's either truckers that are trying to stay awake or there's young people that are feeling sick or something like that and they're just like
Mhm.
okay down this like power boost of whatever it is. That's how I look at organ meats. I look at them instead of being some laboratory made product but that they're mother nature's energy boost, nutritional boost. But I think that ultimately, as we get older, we have to know a couple things. We have to know our why. Like you have to know your why. because if you're just doing it for weight loss, it won't that's not a strong enough anchor because we have to remember we are drawn or repelled from food usually due to emotions and
Mhm.
due to how our day was, right? So
Yes.
if your why is just weight loss, you're not really addressing the fact that you're going to have hard, you're human and you're going to have hard days and you're just going to have
Mhm.
days where you're going to default and we can't rely on, strength of our will, like to keep us from that. So there's certain things that I always focus on a couple things. First of all, we gotta have like our essentials met, our kind of stairway of needs or our pillars, our health pillars. And
Mhm.
ultimately, I have a podcast as well called Everyday Ancestral, and we've done over a year now of episodes, and no matter who I talk to, these pillar needs do not change. It's always the
Mhm.
4 pillars. So, it's sleep. You gotta have good sleep because when you don't have good sleep, you're gonna make poor food choices guaranteed.
Absolutely.
2 is you gotta move. How you move is up to you, but you gotta move. Whether it's going for walks right after you eat, whether it's, going running, gym, whatever it is for you, you gotta do it. 3 is food. You gotta focus on real food. If you're
Mhm.
eating processed foods, it's not there or you're eating out all the time, like, those foods are not designed for your health, they're designed for your money, to take your money. So
Yes.
so you gotta be in control of the ingredients, you gotta know what it's made from, and it's gotta be real food. And then the 4th is just your stress levels. You gotta be able to have be in an environment where you can process stress and or not be in a stressed out state, right? So those don't change. But what we can change is our environment. So
Mhm.
I always try to remind myself I'm a human. I am gonna be inconsistent. Humans are absolutely inconsistent all the
Yeah.
time, and we default to comfort. Instead of pretending that's not true, let's just own it, right? So by owning it, ultimately, what I'm saying is like, look, if I bring food in, my home is where I spent the most time. So if I
Right.
bring food into my home, I am going to be susceptible towards eating it. So first of all, I set the guideline of nothing comes into my home that does not fit my desired outcome or my why, right?
Oh,
So that's first of all. So that means ultimately that you are making it hard to get the foods that you don't want. And that's okay. Some people are like, well, but I deserve it. It's like, fine. Then you have to drive or go or walk or wherever you need to do to go get it. But it's not going to be in your
mhm.
home and you're not buying things from Costco when you get 12, you only want one bar of ice cream, but you just bought it and now you're getting 16. Like, we're not going to
Mhm.
do that because we already know that the outcome doesn't fit what we want. And so I don't bring that stuff into my home. And when I do want it, I don't shame myself for it. I just make it hard to get. Like I force myself to
Absolutely.
have to go out to get it. And if I get it, I buy one. And if they don't have
Mhm.
one and let's say they only have a box, I still only eat one and I throw out the rest. I don't bring it
Yes.
home. Right? So I have very
Exactly.
strict boundaries about that. So that's one thing. Two is then I have to look at, well, okay, I don't like to cook, for example. I mean, I do. I'm just saying if you're someone that
We liked.
but if you're someone who doesn't like to cook, then you have to also address that. And so what I say is
Mhm.
like, okay, first of all, just because we eat doesn't mean we have to love to cook. What we need to
That's
do is
right.
focus on environment and creating an environment that is conducive towards one you enjoy. So let's say you don't like cooking. Well, but maybe you like music or maybe you like a certain podcast or something like that. So listen or play that when you have to cook so that you
Oh,
are not
yes.
thinking about the fact that you're cooking, but you're enjoying the environment you're in. Make sure there's lots of light. Make sure there's bright
Mhm.
colors, like things to make you feel good. Maybe you have conversations with, a loved one when you're cooking. So then that way you're not thinking so much about how much you hate it. And then simply like you focus on what instead of like recipes, because those could be stressful, just focus on like macros. Like, so I know I need to have protein. I know I need to have some fat. And then depending on your diet, you might want vegetables or you might want some resistant starch. Depends on your diet. But
Mhm.
ultimately, you need fat and protein. And
Mhm.
so I just pick what looks good. Literally, when you're at the grocery store, just pick what you're drawn to. Pork chops, great. If it's chicken, great. Whatever it is, just pick it. And then cook it in like when I think about fats, I think about what is the flavor I want. So if it's more of an
Mm.
Asian flavor, I cook it in coconut oil. If it's more of just an American cuisine, I'll cook it in either tallow, lard, or like ghee, for a
Mhm.
slightly butter taste. don't be afraid of raw stuff too. Like it's nice to have, like if you have a good quality of something, like it's good to have raw. It's going to be the most nutrient dense stuff. But ultimately, I think that to bottom line it all is you got to know your why. You got to stop fighting those four pillars, and you got to like just take ownership of like your humanity. And I know that I need to hit those four things. And then we got to be in control of those ingredients, and we got to cook from home because to be in control of the ingredients, you got to cook from home. And so then it's about we're only letting certain foods into our kitchen. We're cooking from home, so we're in control, and we're hopefully getting enough sleep, moving, have systems in place to do those four pillars. So then that way we're also being more mindful of how we do and why we do these things. So that at the end of the day, you're being able to check off, the boxes of all these things of your desired, outcome of what you're trying to do. But ultimately, you may still need to work with someone like yourself. You may still need support, and that's okay. But at least you're taking care of those basic things that you can control.
It's so interesting. I find that mindset is at the core of all of it. And those 4 pillars, when you were saying it, I was like, he's going to call out my 4 pillars. And you did, because they're the 4 main things. If you don't fuel your body right, if you don't get enough sleep, if you don't deal with stress and you don't move your body, these are 4 areas that you have to work on, or you're not going to be getting the results that you want. And I was going to ask you, so for women in midlife, low carb meal prep is so important to them, and they don't really know how to incorporate that and how to actually establish it and make it like a routine. And how could they do that when they're really, really busy and maybe use Pluck as a nutrient dense way to infuse their food? Could you give them some ideas of things they could try this week? Low carb carnivore, it's, the main things.
Well, and we have to factor in too is if you're someone who's sensitive to histamines, then you're going to not want to have leftovers, right? So you're going to want to figure out what works best for you. Like my wife and I stopped fighting with our kids about it because we're big into like leftovers because then we
Mhm.
like to just eat them for lunch and it's easy for us. But the
Yes.
kids just don't like leftovers. So we're like, you know what? We're just gonna trust that if they don't like leftovers, maybe they're sensitive to histamines or something like that. And like we're just gonna kind of trust that their bodies know. And we've stopped making as much food. Like now we don't have leftovers at the end of the
Mm.
dinner. And then we also upped the time that we have meal ready because we noticed that every time when they come home from school at 3:15, 3:30, they're starving.
Mhm.
So we were like, well, let's just have dinner then. So we literally adjusted things based off of what our experiences were, not based off of what someone else was telling us to do. Like we
Okay.
based it off of our household. And then honestly, since we've done that, they eat their whole dinner. They're not snacking. They're not eating all these things that we don't want them to. So first of all, is just to take ownership of like what works for you. Now, if you are someone that what I typically do is I like to think at least 3 meals ahead. So meal planning to me is very underused, very like important health tool because when you meal plan, A, you can build it around your schedule. So that way you're ensuring that you do cook from home. B, you're going to the grocery store with a list based off of that meal plan.
Mhm.
And then you're not making emotional purchases. So a meal plan is really key to me for a structured health plan. And then I would really focus on what is that protein you're making, and if you're only thinking 3 days ahead, most of the stuff can be in your freezer and you're just pulling it out, like the
Mhm.
thing you're eating 3 days from now, you're pulling out from the freezer now. Basically, whatever you're eating 3 days from now, you're pulling out from the freezer that day.
Mhm.
So, you're always gonna be 1 day ahead of 3 days from now, right? So I just break it up. Like I'll have some ground meats, I'll have different species that I mess around with, and I then focus like I do like some vegetables every now and then, but I actually focus on cultured vegetables. Cultured vegetables really make the nutrients in the vegetables more bioavailable. They help to kind of like neutralize the lectins, the bad stuff. So they kind of like turn off the defense modes of these plants and then they open it up so that you can absorb the nutrients. And they're also pre-digested, so there's lots of probiotics in cultured vegetables. So I look for low glycemic vegetables and fruits if I do that, and then I use pluck, and I have different flavors of pluck. So I cook the meat in whatever the fat is, and if it's a busy day, I slow cook it. If it's not, then I pan fry it or sear it. And then I add the seasoning after the fact. And what I do a lot is I just add it with fat. So if let's just say I was cooking a steak, I would cook the steak with a little bit of salt, not much, just
Mhm.
however I wanna cook it, whether it's in the oven, on the pan, or on a grill. And then afterwards, I would add, like, either, some butter over it, and I put a bunch of pluck. So as the butter melted, so does the pluck, and it just
Mm.
melts right over the steak. But I usually add the seasoning when it's at the table, not when it's cooking, because when you cook with seasonings, typically you're just burning them. Yeah, and anytime a seasoning gets burned, it's gonna get bitter, and that's why a
Mm.
lot of seasonings have sugar in them because they're trying to offset that bitter and create that caramelization kind of thing. But, if you just put it on afterwards, it doesn't burn it, and it just maximizes the nutrition and the flavor. So that's primarily how I cook. Low carb is very different than carnivore. So carnivore, you're only eating, animal meats. Low carb, you're picking low glycemic fruits and vegetables. So if I were eating low carb, what I would do is I would probably eat the vegetable first. So then
Mhm.
that way I'm filling my stomach with that and then protein. And then anything after, like a resistant starch or something like that, that's low glycemic, I would do is the last thing. And I would
Ah.
do that because that way you wanna make sure that that's the least amount of what you're eating. The most is the protein and maybe some fiber or whatever vegetables if you believe in that, right? And then the least is that resistant starch. So it just depends on what you're eating. But with carnivore, once again, like I am someone that likes flavor. So for me, I need pluck when I'm eating carnivore to find it interesting because otherwise it gets very boring to me because it's
Mhm.
basically just meat and salt. In that situation, like I'm either focusing on what I'm adding to it, like a seasoning, or I'm focusing on species and I'm focusing on like what fat I'm cooking it in because that's going to help
Mhm.
to adjust the flavor too. So hopefully that answers your question and covers both types of diets.
Yeah, so I find that with carnivore, I have a really strong why, and that keeps me focused on it and not really bored. I like keeping things super simple so that I don't have to do anything complicated. But having the histamine issues, I think a lot of people don't realize the way that they cook their food and that they store it in the fridge and putting it in the freezer is the best case. I like to actually cook my burgers when I'm going to meal prep and freeze them all and then take them with me frozen. And that way, as long as it's a reasonably short trip, then I can keep them frozen. I'm good. I wanted to ask you, what are a couple of daily habits that keep you grounded and keep you healthy?
Yeah, I would say I go to bed at the same time and I wake up at the same time every day. So that's a habit that I found really works for me because while we are inconsistent as humans, our bodies, our biology works very well with consistency. So when you first start out, you may need an alarm clock, but I don't need one. My body just naturally wakes up at the same time now and it
Mhm.
naturally gets tired at the same time. So really that regularity really does help to get better sleep, to improve the quality of my day and my night. So that's one. And then two, and might sound like a kind of an obvious one to some people, but I always mention it because I feel like there's still people out there that need to hear it, which is I carry water with me everywhere.
Mm.
Because of that kidney stone I got, I learned that, I need to be hydrated. And so I just make sure I always have access to hydration. I try to make sure that I'm not always like depending on flavored electrolytes and stuff like that. I do add
Mhm.
sometimes some salt or some electrolyte to my water, but I also make sure that I don't. Like I kind of value my palate. So the palate is shaped by what we eat, the flavors of what we eat. So a lot of times if
Mm.
you have a picky eater, for example, you're dealing with, it's because their their palate is shaped towards salty and sweet. So
Mm.
the same thing can happen if you're having flavored electrolytes. Like water will start to taste plainer the more you do the flavored electrolytes. So I'm very much into like, you got to keep your palate. You can't do the same stimulus over and over and over. You got to keep it kind of guessing. You got to keep it varied, or otherwise you're going to have to do like some kind of elimination diet to really like recalibrate your palate. Because how food tastes is really how you shape your palate. So example might be like when I was growing up, I ate Skippy peanut butter. Well, when I had real peanut butter, it tasted gross to me. But that's only because I was eating the Skippy peanut butter. The minute I pulled the Skip peanut butter out of my diet, suddenly regular peanut butter doesn't taste gross. Same thing with anything, like water to
Mhm.
juice, meat to plant-based, it's the same thing. Like the more you do something, the more you'll be acclimated to it. The less you do it, the more kind of your palate won't be adjusted to it. So regularity does create stability around the palate. The key is just what is the regularity and stability? Is it junk food and processed foods, or is it really clean foods? And then I would say the last one is I have really clear boundaries of when I stop work now.
Mm,
And as someone who has children, that's been really, really important for me. I used to not. So it's been a process. But like I I really I start my day at a certain time and I end it at a certain time. And that's really helped, particularly as a business owner, because I don't have a 9 to 5er. Like I own my business. So like for me, it'd be really easy to let it seep into my entire life
mhm,
and affect not only my relationships, but also my well-being. And so by having that clear boundary of like, this is when it starts, this is when it stops. And I also do make sure that I work out. So I build my day not around the business, but around my health business. Or I should say a better way to say it is like, instead of building my day around a business plan, I build it around a health plan.
mm.
So now it's not about how do I fit my workout into my business day? It's about how do I fit my business day into my workout? So
Good.
it's a totally different way of looking at it. And so, like, I've learned that every day I wake up at the same time every day because I know I need to work out before my kids go to school. So that way I get my workout in and I can still be a dad.
Mm,
And then my workday actually starts at like 9 because I have all those other things. I'm taking my kids to school. Like those things have priority too for me. So I still work 9 to 5, but it's a totally different agenda. I'm going to bed around 8:30 or 9, which is crazy for most people, right? I'm going to bed pretty early, but I also wake up at 4:30.
mhm.
So it's all like just by that regularity and keeping it really structured like that, it helps me so much. And I will testify like I have done it very unstructured for most of my life. And I really can testify to the difference. Having structure is not a bad thing. It helps me regulate and it helps my digestion regulate. It helps my health regulate. It helps me not have cravings because I know when I'm gonna eat, I know what I'm gonna eat, and I just stay consistent because my schedule is consistent.
I was thinking when you said all of that, it's an impact on the people around you too when you have all of these things in place.
Definitely. Definitely. Like, I think it's easy in this world today to forget that, what is success? What is substance? And it is relationships in my judgment. That's what it is. We don't necessarily know what happens when we die, but we do know what it means to live. And we know how filled up we can get when we're holding, people's hands or when we're interacting with them and like we're loving them and our interactions as a community, as individuals with each other. It's like that is what being alive is about because it's living life through this body because that's the only thing we know does not pass, right? Go is that when you die, this body doesn't go with you. So it's like
Right.
that means this life is about living this body. I mean, it's about being in the senses of touch, taste, smell, hearing. It's about being in all of it. And so, yeah, like my kids know I'm there for them in the morning. I'm there for them at 5. Like they know when to expect me and then I make sure that on weekends I'm not working. So I think we're in a day and age where some people are so afraid to for limitations or to draw boundaries, particularly around the diet. They'll be like, "Oh, you're so restrictive. That's like an eating disorder." It's like, "No, no, that's me being healthy because we live in a world where we're constantly being distracted, tricked, or
Mhm.
framed in some way, and it's not
Yes.
conducive towards our health, and so it's like we have to build that structure because no one else is, that idea of, like, we cannot outsource our health. We have to have agency around our own health, and it's just true, and so it's less about what you are, what you aren't doing, it's more about what works for you and being honest about what works or doesn't work.
Yes, and setting boundaries around that so that it protects you so that you can take care of yourself in that way and not feel like other people are telling you how you should or shouldn't live, how you should or shouldn't eat, all of that. So, where can the women find you and learn more about Pluck Seasoning?
Yeah, you can go to our website at eatpluck.com. You can go to Amazon and purchase it there as well. And then on socials, you'll find us at Eat Pluck, and you'll find me at Chef James Berry. As I mentioned, we have a podcast as well, and you can find that at Everyday Ancestral. And yeah, make sure to reach out should you interact with us on any of those mediums. Don't be shy about reaching out because we really do answer them. We answer questions. We are curious ourselves, and we love interacting with people.
And I'll put all of your links in the description. And it has been amazing to be able to have you on the podcast and let you share your expertise and your knowledge with my listeners. And I hope to have you on again in the future. This has been an incredible interview. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.